Hi, I'm Lavana. My dad once looked me in the eye and said, "Don't even think of showing up to the wedding." And he meant it. I wasn't invited, not because I caused drama, but because I made the mistake of being helpful. I paid for the venue, the honeymoon, even the cake. Then they erased me. Quietly, thoroughly. My name vanished from the website, my gift was credited to someone else, and my childhood was rewritten in whispers behind my back. But what finally broke me wasn't what they said. It was what they didn't. What happens when the one who built the celebration decides to pull the plug? Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have burned the guest list too? I had told myself I wouldn't expect anything. I wasn't hoping for applause, for speeches, or my name in glitter ink on the program. I just wanted to help. Quietly. Like I always had. A few months ago, when Valora started planning her wedding, I offered to handle some of the logistics, paying the deposit on the venue, finding a photographer through one of my clients, even putting money toward the honeymoon fund. Not because I was trying to be involved in every decision, but because it felt like the only way I could belong without asking to be seen. Growing up, I wasn't the star. That was Valora's role, and she played it perfectly. Bright, polished, always saying the right thing. I was the one who made sure the kitchen light was off before we left the house, who remembered to send the thank you notes, who brought Band-Aids to every family vacation. I wasn't ever anyone's favorite, but I made myself useful. That had to count for something, right? So when I stopped by Dad's place to drop off some tax forms he needed, I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. He'd left a manila folder open on the kitchen counter, half covered by his glasses, like always. Out of habit, I moved the glasses and slid the folder closed. That's when I saw it. A printed spreadsheet labeled Wedding Guest Master List. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but I did. My eyes scanned through names of cousins, former neighbors, even Dad's old business partner and his new wife. I kept looking. Then I found my name, struck through in red ink. Next to it, handwritten, "No, bad optics." For a second, everything in the room went silent, like I'd stepped out of my own body. I didn't touch the page again, just pulled out my phone and took a photo. I didn't delete it. I didn't say a word to Dad as he came in, grunted something about the weather, and asked if I wanted iced tea. I told him I had a meeting to get to. I left the tea on the counter. That night, I stared at the photo, not because I was in denial, but because I needed the proof. That I hadn't imagined it. That this time, it wasn't something I'd misunderstood. Later, I picked up the phone. "Hey," I said, "do you have a minute?" My father's voice was flat. "Yeah, what's up?" "I saw the guest list," I said carefully. "You crossed me off." A pause. Then, "I didn't think you were still expecting to come." "I helped pay for it." "You helped," he repeated. "But Valora doesn't want distractions at her wedding, and you know how things have been." I waited. "Look," he said, "don't even think of showing up to the wedding." That line, so casually delivered, so rehearsed, it landed like a punch without force. Not enough to knock you down, just enough to leave you dizzy. "She's worked hard to build her image," he continued. "You showing up? It complicates that. And frankly, it's not fair to her. You think I'd ruin her wedding by being there?" He sighed. "Lavana, you've always had a way of pulling focus, even when you don't mean to. This day's not about you." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Got it." Then I hung up. The silence that followed didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the sound of something locking into place. I sat on the couch with my laptop open, staring at the draft of an invitation I'd once written for Valora, back when she first got engaged. It had been silly and sweet, something I thought I might print on a card to slip into her bridal shower gift. I highlighted the whole thing, deleted it. There was nothing left to explain. 3 days after that call, I still hadn't deleted the photo, the one with my name slashed through in red. I wasn't carrying it around to punish myself, I just needed the reminder. That even after all I'd done, I could be removed in one stroke of a pen, like I was a smudge on Valora's perfect canvas. That morning, while sipping coffee at my desk, an old college friend, Lacey, messaged me. "That blanket you sent Valora was gorgeous. She cried at the shower." I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before replying. "What blanket?" "Hand-stitched thing," she typed back. "With your mom's initials? Everyone thought it was from her old mentor. Kathy something?" I didn't answer. I opened the wedding registry website, scrolled through the completed gifts list. My name wasn't attached to anything. Not the honeymoon I'd funded. Not the catering I'd helped lock in at a discounted rate. Not even the monogrammed robes I'd suggested over brunch 6 weeks ago. Nothing. I pulled up the receipt for the blanket. A hand-embroidered piece I'd commissioned from a local artisan. Cream linen, stitched with soft gold thread. Our mother's initials, V and R, intertwined in a tiny heart at the corner. The note I wrote had taken an hour to get right. Thoughtful but simple. "From your sister, so a piece of mom is wrapped around you on your big day." Apparently, it had arrived. But my name had not. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was probably a mistake, but the knot in my stomach said otherwise. When people erase your name once, it stings. When they make it look like you never existed, it settles in your bones. Later that afternoon, I drove to the bridal salon. I hadn't been invited to Valora's makeup trial, but I figured showing up with lunch might count for something. Maybe a sandwich and a smile could put me back in the room. Isolde answered the door, her voice tight but warm. "Oh, sweetheart, you didn't have to." Valora sat near the mirror, her head tilted as a stylist blended contour into her cheekbones. She didn't look up. I handed over the bag of croissants and smoothies. Isolde took them with a nod, placed them on the counter, and sat beside Valora like a well-rehearsed mother of the bride. As I hovered nearby, pretending to scroll through my phone, Isolde leaned closer. Her voice was low, careful. "Let's try not to bring any extra energy into today, okay?" I looked at her, confused. She smiled gently, as if she were brushing lint from my shoulder. "You know how your sister is. She just wants everything calm." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and kept standing there like some forgotten intern who brought snacks to a meeting she wasn't allowed to speak in. No one asked me to sit. No one asked if I wanted to watch the fitting. I watched from behind a rack of gowns while Valora twirled in a champagne-colored dress, the stylist clapping and saying, "This is it." I left before anyone noticed. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on the floor, legs crossed, laptop on my lap. I started typing a message to Valora. "I heard about the blanket. It hurt." Backspace. "If you didn't want my name on anything, you could have just said it." Backspace again. I stared at the blinking cursor for minutes. Then I hit delete. Instead, I opened the app I'd used to wire money to their honeymoon fund. The balance was still pending, untouched. $4,500 sitting in limbo. I hovered over the reversal option. My finger paused, pressed lightly, but didn't click. "One more," I whispered to myself. "Just one more, then I'm done." Later, I lay in bed, phone in hand, watching Valora's Instagram story. She and Isolde clinked glasses in the salon mirror, surrounded by soft music and gold-tinged filters. The caption read, "Only love at this table." I started to wonder if I was ever really meant to be at any table they sat at. I didn't touch anything, yet. That had been my last thought before falling asleep, if you could call that mess of tossing and ceiling-staring sleep. The next morning at work, I tried to focus. I poured the same coffee into the same chipped mug, stared at the same spreadsheet. Numbers usually grounded me. Today, they just floated. Midway through my third attempt at reconciling a quarterly statement, an email from a coworker pinged into my inbox. No subject line, just a single link. "Valora's wedding site is stunning. That gazebo, you must be proud." I hesitated, clicked. The page loaded slowly. White background, soft blush tones, scrolling script fonts. Valora Pulse Branson. a celebration of love. The banner photo was the gazebo at Lakewood Ridge, backlit by the sunset, the one I had helped scout. I kept scrolling. There were tabs for Our Story, Bridal Party, Schedule, and then Gratitude. I opened it. I wasn't there. There was a glowing paragraph about chosen family, about being surrounded by people who have supported us unconditionally. There was a thank you note to Branson's parents for making this day possible, and to Valora's mentor for her emotional and financial guidance. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. And the layout? It was mine. I'd helped build the wireframe for this site during one of our coffee meetings, back when I thought helping was love and not leverage. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just closed the window and stared out my office window as traffic crawled past. That night, at home, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Wedding Assets. It was my own kind of ledger: spreadsheets, receipts, screenshots. I opened the Excel file. Each row was a contribution. Deposit for the venue, honeymoon installment, vendor booking fees, gift receipts. Total column, nearly $11,000, all under my name. I scrolled through each item slowly, as if reviewing evidence in a trial I hadn't known I was on trial for. And in a way, maybe I had been. Quiet contributions were only safe until someone decided they could be erased. I opened my banking app, watched the line item marked honeymoon still sitting there, money waiting to be used by someone who had no idea I was even part of the narrative anymore. Don't worry, I want to help, not be in the way. That's what I'd told Valora months ago. She'd smiled. A tight-lipped, distracted smile. The kind you give when you've already made a decision and are letting someone else pretend they still matter. I sat outside on my balcony after that, the air heavy with humidity, the sky split between gold and gray. A storm was threatening, but hadn't landed yet, and I remembered something. Senior year of high school, graduation. Valora had made valedictorian. I was the quiet one with perfect attendance, volunteering at the food bank, running after-school tutoring. They had called her name, cheered, clapped. My name had been printed wrong on the program. Rebecca Wells. I remember glancing toward Mom. She hadn't noticed. No one did. I kept smiling. That had been the first time I felt it. The erasure. It was small, unintentional, forgivable. But it had stayed. Now it wasn't a typo. Now it was deliberate, a surgical cut. My presence edited out with precision, as if someone had gone through the footage of my life and snipped the frames where I showed up. I leaned back in the chair. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Maybe, I said aloud to no one, maybe it's not about being forgotten. I let that thought hang. Maybe it's about being too inconvenient to remember. That night, I opened the admin panel of the wedding site. I still had access. I hovered over the back-end editor, fingers resting on the keys. I didn't touch anything, yet. That was the promise I'd made to myself. But as spring settled heavier into the city and the wedding posts grew shinier by the hour, even restraint began to feel like a burden I was carrying alone. Late that afternoon, while trying to clear emails before the weekend, I noticed one from Lakewood Ridge, the venue I'd reserved months ago for Valora. It was a routine system-generated notification. Final balance, due dates, client of record. I almost archived it without opening. Almost. But something tugged. So I clicked. The invoice was polished, formatted like all their others. At the top right corner, I saw the name. Not mine, not even close. Branson Harper. My hands went still on the keyboard. A pulse beat at the base of my skull. I scrolled, hoping I'd missed something. Maybe I was just the payer, and they'd listed him for optics. But the contact phone number? Valora's? The client's signature line? Blank, but pre-filled under his name. I called the venue directly. I wasn't angry, not yet, just confused. Amy, the coordinator I'd worked with from day one, answered cheerfully. Hi, Lavana, what can I help with? I just got the updated invoice, I said, trying to sound calm. I noticed the client name changed to Branson Harper. I booked this under my name, so I'm just confused. She hesitated. Yes, there was a request to update the primary contact. It came from the family. Someone on the Harper side. Said you were stepping away from planning? I never said that. Another pause. Softer this time. I'm sorry, I assumed it was coordinated. I thanked her and hung up. My name had been scrubbed from a legal document I initiated and paid for. This wasn't just rewriting history, this was changing ownership of it. I stared at the screen, at the elegant font declaring Branson as the client of record. It almost made me laugh. I'd built this wedding from the back end, negotiated contracts, sent deposits, talked vendors off ledges. And now it looked like I'd never existed in any of it. The weight behind my ribs settled into something new. Not grief, not shock, precision. That night, around 9 p.m., I was finishing up dinner when my phone buzzed. Another email, this one forwarded by accident. Subject line, final speech flow. It was a thread between Valora and her planner, Kimbra. I clicked. Valora. If Lavana tries to speak during the toasts, shut it down. I already told Dad to handle it. Kimbra. Understood. We'll omit her slot entirely. Consider it handled. No one had ever told me I was supposed to speak, but apparently they'd already planned how to silence me. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it. Just saved the email, then closed my laptop with care, like I might break the table if I moved too fast. I stepped outside. It was humid again. Spring in Austin had this way of sticking to your skin like a memory. A neighbor across the courtyard watered their plants, unbothered. The normalcy of it almost felt cruel. I sat down on my balcony chair and breathed slowly, watching the twilight sky melt into violet. I wasn't being excluded. I was being erased, and maybe that had always been the plan. Not to hurt me outright, but to make sure I was just not there. I'd let them do it before. Graduation, Thanksgiving. The time Valora's photo album had 10 pictures of me and only 2 with my face showing. But this wasn't forgetfulness. This was strategy. This was intentional. I whispered it aloud just once. One more time, just once more, then I choose me. The venue thought I was a name on paper, so next time they'd feel what it meant to lose that paper. And as they doubled down, I stood up, not with a raised voice or some dramatic storm out. No broken glasses, no public scene. I just stood up, emotionally, mentally, the way someone does when they've been quietly dismissed one too many times, and finally realize that silence doesn't mean peace. It means permission. And I never gave mine. It happened at what they casually called a simple dinner. Harlan was at the grill, flipping steaks like he was hosting a backyard summit. Isolde brought her cucumber salad that nobody ever finished, but always complimented. Valora waltzed in late, of course, but with the kind of entrance that made people straighten their posture. She had a way of entering a room like she was blessing it, and they ate it up. Every joke she made got a laugh. Every story got full attention. Me? I was seated near the far end of the table, nursing a sweating glass of iced tea and that gut-deep feeling that something more than dinner was about to be served. Eventually, the conversation slid where it always did. The wedding. We're finalizing the seating chart this week, Isolde said, flipping through a printed spreadsheet in her lap. Cousin Terry's bringing another date. Harlan grunted. God help us. The last one smelled like canned tuna and campaigned through dessert. The table chuckled. I didn't. I can help with the seating if you want, I offered, keeping my tone easy. I've still got the master spreadsheet from last year's fundraiser. It could save you time. Isolde gave me one of those tight-lipped smiles that looked polite but meant absolutely not. That's sweet of you, but everything's under control. Valora didn't even look up from her phone, probably halfway through planning her next social post. I tried again. I just figured, since I helped book the venue and the honeymoon flights. You've done enough already, Harlan cut in. It didn't sound grateful. It sounded like a stop sign. And then, Silence. Not awkward. Worse. The kind of silence where no one corrects him, where the air shifts with unspoken agreement. Agreement that, yeah, maybe I am too much. Just be a guest, honey, Isolde said, like it was some gentle mercy. Like being told to shrink wasn't the same as being shut out. I nodded and pushed a piece of chicken around my plate, wondering how I'd made it this far into adulthood, still believing that helping was the same as being wanted. Later, while the others settled the bill, I sat in the waiting area of the restaurant with Junie. 6 years old. Honest, unfiltered, still too young to lace her truth with diplomacy. She was lining up sugar packets like they were soldiers. She looked up and said, "Mom says you get too emotional. That's why you can't hold the mic." I blinked. She didn't say it to hurt me. She said it like she was pointing out the color of my shoes. No sting in my throat, no tears. I'd been trained out of those long ago. What I felt instead was something colder. Confirmation. Children don't invent these things. They echo what's been said behind closed doors. I walked her back to Valora, ruffled her hair, smiled like it didn't slice through me. At home, I sat in the kitchen, lights off, just me and the soft hum of the fridge. That same chair I used to sit in as a teen, waiting for someone to notice I was hurting. But this time, I didn't wait. I opened the voice memo app on my phone and pressed record. I didn't share it. It wasn't for them. It wasn't for Facebook or proof. It was for me. If I had a mic, I started, "Here's what I'd say." And I spoke. For 5 minutes straight. No crying, no dramatics. Just the words that had been sitting on my chest like a weight. I told the truth. Not just about the wedding, but about all the little cuts they'd taught me to dismiss. The slights dressed up as jokes. The way my offers to help were treated like intrusions. How being useful had never once made me feel seen. I ended it with a whisper. "But don't worry, you'll never have to hear this." Then I opened a message to Valora. I didn't send the audio, just typed, "I see everything you're doing. I won't let you rewrite this story." The typing bubble popped up immediately. 3 seconds. Then, nothing. No reply. That was fine. If they wanted me to be invisible, I was about to teach them what real absence looks like. And it starts with not begging for a chair at a table I helped build. Because if they were going to erase me from the celebration, I was ready to rewrite the ending. 3 weeks before the wedding. A Thursday, heavy with summer humidity. Everything felt thick and unresolved, like the tension was hanging in the air, just waiting to break. Valora was making final decisions like this was a royal coronation. Isolde was knee-deep in flour and cinnamon, stress baking like she could sugarcoat the silence. And Harlan? He stayed in his favorite role, emotionally absent, acting like everything was perfectly fine. I hadn't spoken to any of them since that night. The dinner. The slap of humiliation wrapped in roast chicken and fake laughter. I had sent Valora one message after, the kind you type, erase, rewrite 3 times, and she never responded. Not a word. I told myself I wouldn't chase her. I meant it. But that morning, something landed in my voicemail. An accident. A forwarded voice message from Valora meant for Harlan. My phone had transcribed part of it before I even tapped play. "I know Lavana's not stable." I froze. And then I hit play. Valora's voice was smooth, unshaken, controlled in a way that made my stomach twist. "I know Lavana's not stable. Don't let her speak. We can't risk another episode. Last time she made everything about her, and this day isn't hers. You said you'd handle it." She didn't sound concerned. She didn't sound hurt. She sounded rehearsed. Like this wasn't the first time she'd told someone I was a liability. Maybe she'd said it to Branson. Maybe to the planner. Maybe to everyone. I stood in my kitchen, phone on the counter, fridge humming behind me, like it didn't care either. I didn't pause the message. I let her finish. And something inside me, that last bit of thread holding me in place, just unraveled. Not a snap, a slow, quiet pull. That afternoon was the final wedding rehearsal planning meeting. I hadn't RSVP'd. I hadn't been asked. I showed up anyway. The venue was a private suite at the downtown country club. Polished wood. Too much beige. The kind of place where nothing real ever happens. Kimbra, the planner, greeted everyone with a clipboard and a corporate smile. She handed out agendas and assigned seats like this was a board meeting. I found my name near the end of the table. My name. That was it. No role, no title, no speech. Valora had a toast. Branson had a toast. Their parents, the maid of honor, even someone's quirky aunt from Atlanta had a toast. Me? Nothing. When Kimbra reached the speech order section, I raised my hand. Just wondering, why am I not listed here? She gave a tight smile. We had to trim things down for time. I'm sure you understand. I was never told I was removed. Isolde leaned in, trying to soften it. It's probably for the best, sweetie. You don't need that pressure. I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. Not one person at that table wanted to hear my voice, and I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of watching me flinch. After the meeting, I didn't make small talk. I didn't fake a smile. I walked out, past the velvet carpet and thick doors, straight into the July heat that hit like a slap. I let it burn. On the drive home, I rolled down the windows and let the wind drown out my thoughts. The world was still moving. Birds still chirped. Cars still honked. Kids still laughed in the park. But me? I was done shrinking for their comfort. Back in my apartment, I walked straight to my desk. No tea, no shoes off, just straight to the screen. I opened the honeymoon fund page. There it was, $4,500. Untouched. Sitting there like a secret I was still too kind to speak aloud. But not today. Click, cancel, click, reverse. The money moved, instantly. A little confirmation popped up, like justice wearing a name tag. I stared at it, read it twice, took a screenshot, saved it in a folder I renamed Receipts. And then I renamed the file itself. Wouldn't want to ruin anything JPG. I didn't send it. Not yet. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I strategized. Because if they were going to cut me out like a stain, I would stitch a whole new ending, one they'd never see coming. And with every thread they cut, I tied one into a noose for their perfect plan. Saturday arrived heavy and humid, the kind of Texas heat that feels personal, like the sun isn't just rising, it's targeting you. I wasn't on any group chats anymore. No pings, no reminders, no bridesmaid itinerary. Valora must have quietly removed me. Or maybe it was Branson. Honestly, at this point, it didn't matter. Their silence spoke volumes. But I had my own updates now, and mine weren't filtered through fake smiles or pastel fonts. The first came mid-morning. A gentle ding from my phone, a tag from a former coworker on Instagram. I tapped it out of habit. There it was, a stunning 3-tier wedding cake, white buttercream laced with real pressed wildflowers, blue cornflower, white alyssum, and pink cosmos. It was my design, one I'd spent 2 hours sketching and choosing down to the floral placement and frosting type during a consult with the baker months ago. But the caption, proud to work with the Harper family and Valora's best friend on this beautiful custom concept. Valora's best friend. The words clawed a little. I took a breath and messaged the bakery. I kept it light, measured, unbothered. Hi there. Just saw your recent post. Gorgeous cake. Just wanted to check. Was there a change in point of contact? I had originally worked with you on that design a while back. The reply came quickly. Oh, I thought you were just the referral. Her team sent an update last week with new names. Sorry for the confusion. Cake's still going to be beautiful, though. Right, just a referral. Like I was some shadow in the background, holding open doors and footing the bill. I set my phone down slowly, carefully, on the windowsill. Not out of anger, out of clarity. One more thread had come loose, and I wasn't going to be the one unraveling. By afternoon, I'd done laundry, folded towels I didn't need to fold, let the TV drone in the background. Anything to keep the shaking down. But life doesn't wait until you're ready. Another ping. This time, an email. From a colleague. Subject line. Is this your sister? I clicked. A TikTok. Sent without commentary. Just that question. The video opened with a bridal shop fitting. Valora glowed in a soft ivory mermaid gown, surrounded by bridesmaids who fluttered around her, like extras in a staged fairy tale. The room was all curated charm, until it wasn't. A brunette bridesmaid leaned into the camera and whispered, "At least she won't show up this time." Another chimed in, louder, "Can you imagine her face if she knew she paid for the dress?" The laughter that followed was instant, ugly, real. And in the corner of the frame, Valora stared into the mirror. Silent. But she didn't stop it. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I didn't react. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. I just closed the app. That's what they expected. Lavana, the silent sponsor, the ghost in the corner who funded everything and asked for nothing. But here's the thing about ghosts. We watch. And we remember. I stood up, went to my file drawer, and pulled out the venue contract. My name still sat proudly as the financial lead. I didn't cancel anything, yet. But I sent a flagged message to the event coordinator. "Hi, please inform me immediately if there are any issues with payments or changes to the event file. Thank you." I checked the honeymoon account, again. My money? Already withdrawn. My reversal? Secure. That one act, pulling my funds back, had stayed with me like a small secret victory. No fireworks, just a quiet reclaiming. Then I opened my evidence folder. The bakery email, printed. The refund confirmation from the honeymoon account, filed. The planner's apology from last week when I missed the bridal party rehearsal, tucked in. The voicemail from Valora calling me emotionally unstable, transcribed. Every slight, every insult, every erasure. I wasn't collecting memories. I was building proof. They thought I was fraying, but I wasn't the one unraveling. I was the hand pulling the thread, slowly, precisely, while their perfect little tapestry came undone. And what came next wasn't silence. It was the sound of everything they built, cracking, collapsing, because they thought I was just the background. Turns out, I was the scaffolding. The week before Valora's wedding was a masterclass in manufactured perfection. Her Instagram was a blur of soft pastels, champagne flutes, and bridal countdowns in cursive font. Isolde, ever the peacemaker, kept her check-in calls bright and shallow, never straying into dangerous depths. The family group chat buzzed with gift registries and dress fittings and itineraries, as if nothing had ever fractured, as if I was simply an optional guest. But beneath the surface, the thread I'd quietly tugged weeks ago had begun to snap. It started innocently enough, with a call I wasn't expecting. "Hi, this is Dana from Flora and Root," a cheerful voice chirped, just confirming the final bouquet adjustment with, "The corporate sponsor?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, the what?" A brief hesitation, then a clumsy explanation. "Oh, your father said you were just handling financials, not the family decisions. We just needed payment verification." That word, just, clanged louder than the rest. Not daughter, not sister, corporate sponsor. It would have hurt less coming from Valora. But this came from Harlan, the man who once tucked me in with weather updates and called me his quiet compass. The man who taught me how to read stars, only to forget I existed in daylight. I didn't scream. I didn't sob. I got up, poured a glass of water, sat at my desk, and started typing. Subject, cancellation notice. Venue sponsorship withdrawal. Subject, reallocation of floral and cake funds. Subject, termination of honeymoon contribution. Each email was clean, clinical, and final. No dramatic monologue, no lengthy justifications. Just the facts, with attached contracts and payment receipts, every dotted I and crossed T, proving that the dream they paraded on Pinterest was built with my bank account. The final email had no CCs. No reply all, just one recipient. 2. Harlan subject. As requested body. You made it clear I wasn't part of the family. I'm simply following your lead. I attached every document they hoped would remain invisible, every invoice with my name, every authorization form signed by me, every clause that made me, not them, the legal sponsor. Then I hit send. By 4:12 p.m., the dominoes began to fall. Payment incomplete. Booking marked inactive. Venue hold removed. Client has withdrawn sponsorship. Please advise. Balance unpaid. Access to vendor portal revoked. And then came the real avalanche. On my phone, Valora's name blinked twice, then 3 times, then again. I didn't pick up. Then came his message. From the man who once told me I was the anchor of our family. Harlan. Why no punctuation, no signature? Just that single word, asking for something he never gave me. Explanation. I stared at the message. Then, without a word, I walked to the printer, collected the confirmation emails, and slipped them into a folder I'd labeled weeks ago. Proof I exist. I sipped my tea as the printer hummed, the pages sliding out like quiet declarations. I didn't post. I didn't announce. I didn't warn. Because they didn't see me when I showed up with grace. So they would feel me when I left with power. By dusk, Valora's countdown posts had vanished. Her curated grid replaced with silence. The comments turned off. The hashtags deleted. And the wedding that was supposed to be the family's crowning moment? Suddenly scrambling to find new vendors, new funds, and someone, anyone, willing to show up. But I didn't watch it unfold. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and opened a blank notebook. Because while they were busy staging a picture-perfect memory without me, I was quietly building a future that required none of them. They wanted me gone from the pictures, so I vanished from the foundation. And that's when they realized the only thing holding it all together was the one they erased. Saturday arrived loud with sunlight. Not the gentle kind that peeks in through the curtains, but the kind that barges in like it owns the place. I didn't leave my apartment. I had no reason to. The aftermath came looking for me. The first text buzzed in just after 10 a.m. A college friend who'd flown in for the wedding wrote, "Are you okay? Is this some kind of joke?" A minute later, another message. "The venue's closed. People are just standing here. Did you cancel it?" I stared at the screen, but didn't respond. My silence wasn't meant to provoke. It just was. I opened Instagram without thinking. There they were, images rolling in from guests dressed to the nines, posed awkwardly in front of the locked gates at Lakewood Ridge. Some were confused, some were furious. Captions ranged from, "Guess it's canceled," to, "Did no one think to send a notice?" One especially bitter one read, "Flew 3,000 miles for this. Unreal." And then I saw her, Valora, in a reposted shot taken from across the parking lot. She was standing alone in her wedding gown, sunlight cutting across her cheekbones, her face unreadable. Regal, but rattled. The gate behind her was locked, no mistake. The venue had done what it always does. No final payment, no event. Just business. And me, I didn't feel anger, or glee, or regret. For the first time in a very long time, I just felt still. It was like watching the credits roll on a movie you'd seen too many times. You already know how it ends. You just needed to see it stop. The following week passed in long, slow slices. I returned to work, replied to emails, shopped at the market. On the outside, it was life as usual. On the inside, it was quiet, and that quiet didn't ache anymore. By Wednesday, Harlan showed up at my door. No warning, no call. Just the hollow knock of someone who used to be family. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He stood in the hallway, looking older than I remembered. Like a man who'd lost something he wasn't sure how to name. "I came to explain," he said. That was it. No, I'm sorry, no softness. Just those 4 words, like they were supposed to heal years of silence and erasure. I crossed my arms. "You're not here to apologize?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "Valora said you sabotaged the wedding." I didn't flinch. "You told the venue I was just a sponsor, not your daughter." "That's not what I meant," No, Harlan, it's exactly what you meant. You said I didn't belong in the picture, so I made sure the whole frame collapsed. He didn't answer, just stood there with the same silence he'd used all year like a shield. And when he realized there was nothing left to say, he turned and walked away. No apology, no closure. Just absence. His usual language. The next day, an email arrived from Isolde, my cousin. It had been forwarded from Valora. The subject line read, "Mental sabotage." Attached was a PDF I never opened. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. Accusations disguised as concern, a narrative where I was the villain in her story. But I wasn't interested in her version of events anymore. That weekend, I found myself at Town Lake, walking along the trails where I used to go with Mom. I hadn't been there since the funeral. That place used to hurt, used to echo with silence I didn't know how to carry. But this time, it felt different. I played the same playlist I had when I was grieving. Soft acoustic songs, the kind that held me together in pieces. And now, that music didn't feel like glue. It felt like a background score to a life I was building on my own terms. I sat on a weathered bench beneath a tree just beginning to bloom, phone in hand. A message from Marcy, my coworker, and the only person who'd checked on me that day, lit up my screen. "Whatever you did, it was epic." I smiled, turned the phone face down. I didn't do it to be epic. I did it because it was the only thing left that made sense. I didn't attend the cousin's baby shower, didn't reply to Harlan when he sent me a photo of Junie holding a crayon-scrawled sign that read, "Thank you for being strong," a sign she clearly didn't write herself. And no, I wasn't angry. I just didn't feel like pretending anymore. Sometimes healing doesn't show up with a dramatic scene or a round of applause. Sometimes it's just the moment when the silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like peace. I wasn't written into their fairy tale ending, but that's fine, because I've finally started writing my own beginning,